Tottenham Hotspur have appointed Thomas Frank as their new head coach.
And the consistency and the players know the patterns. But of course I'm aware that we need to be flexible sometimes.
You look what Thomas Frank has done over the course of 7 highly successful years, you can understand why Tottenham would be interested.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at Stedka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 260, where we would also appreciate if you do not boo our terrible performances. We've got Scott alongside. He is at Scott G. Bird. Scott, what is up, my friend?
I would imagine I get booed often on this show. So yeah, no, keep it coming. But no, glad to be here. It's a kind of a shitty week if you're a Spurs fan, and the women's team didn't even play, as they've often picked up our spirits as of late, right? But Iowa State gets a big win yesterday. They go 8-4 to finish the season. They'll end up in a bowl game. The I don't know, whatever. I'm trying to think of a really funny made up name of a bowl game right now, but you guys get my point.
The cereal bowl, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The cereal and milk bowl, which would be a good one. And the Iowa State women today, they won the Florida Gulf Coast blah 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 Thanksgiving tournament today with a thumping win over Indiana, and Audie Crooks sets a school record, putting up 43 points. So yeah, roll clones. It was a good weekend from an Iowa State perspective. Iowa State pod, if you guys want to just rip on them for an hour,
I'm telling you, man, you're doing your best. You're doing your damnedest to delay the Tottenham discussion here, because Todd is also with us after all of that. TC, what is up, my man? How's your Sunday?
Hey, any day, brother, any day that you can start a Tottenham podcast by talking about Iowa State women's hoops instead of a shambolic home loss to Fulham is a good fucking day.
We could just keep talking about Audie Crooks, but I think the people probably want to hear some bitching and moaning. There's going to be a lot of that, I'm sure, on this pod. Let's, instead of talking about Fulham, though, let's take it back, because last time we spoke, Spurs were heading into PSG off the backs of whatever the hell that was in the North London Derby prior. And, I think we all kind of knew this PSG match was going to be pretty much like a free hit for the most part. Nobody would have expected them to get 3 points. And for the first 30 minutes, Spurs looked very much on the back heel, but this was a little bit of a different look for sure, going with more of a 4-4-2 with Richarlison and Colomwani up top. A little bit of a different midfield look, and Spurs, you could say, at least bounced back performance-wise for the most part from the Arsenal match, but still it's another failure to get anything from a match because of just a bunch of blunders and everything else that went down. TC, what was your take on what came out of that PSG match?
Well, I mean, you hit on the important point, right? Like, we all, or anyone that is rational enough to recognize what type of squad we were fielding this year, made sure that they marked this PSG match away in Paris down as a loss in your tally sheet for the amount of points we need to progress to the knockout stages of the Champions League. The thing with which I take issue is where you said Spurs at least bounce back performance-wise, because we shipped back-to-back fucking hat tricks. And, I mean, I don't know, brother, anytime you give up that many goals, like, I can't, like, was the performance really that good, or did you just score more? Right?
Yeah, it's a fair point. Like, they looked like they had more intent, I guess, but it would be impossible not to versus the Arsenal game, so... Like, they obviously were going to look like they had more intent. But I hear you completely. Scott, what did you see from this? Because at least for me, it was like, okay, they're not just going to lay down. I mean, hell, they scored the first goal. They took 2 different leads. And, of course, as TC mentioned, they shipped them. Like, they're just leaking goals like crazy right now, which is something we certainly need to get into, especially based on, we talked about this team looking more solid defensively through the first quarter of the season. which has certainly gone out the window. But what was your take on this PSG match?
I said in the group chat, this was just Angelo, is all this was. And I'm kind of joking, but I'm also not joking at all. Like, we went for it and left ourselves very exposed. I think my frustration is from a tactical perspective. A couple of those goals were world-class goals from Vitinha, and I also said in the group chat, Vitinha starts at every position for Spurs outside of center back and goalkeeper. I'm also not joking.
Facts.
Say that, right?
I don't know. He might be able to start a keeper at this point, man.
He could after what we'll get to regarding yesterday's match, right? But Vitinha, hats off, 2 world-class goals. Those are pretty tough to do anything about. But I'm upset tactically because I think if you look at the Arsenal match, which you guys have talked about, I know, and you look at the PSG match, I think you flip-flop those. I think you take the game to Arsenal, right, because it's a North London derby, and you take more of a pragmatic approach into PSG as compared to what we did. They're too good to not do, or to do otherwise, rather. And on top of all that, we can't figure out how to do both things at the same time. We either defend well and create .01 xG, or we ship 5 goals, right? And that's a concern, because that at this level you can't chalk that up to personnel and squad building and injuries like that. That's tactical and that's coaching, right? And I'm not trying to take the conversation into sacking Thomas Frank at all when I say that, but I'm just frustrated in the sense that tactically we can't seem to do both things that we need to do. And that's a very surface level, 30,000 foot, myopic take, right? You have to do more than defend and attack, but when you can't figure out how to do both of those, at least to some degree, at the same time, you're going to have a bad time, and I think that's what's happening right now.
So the thing I saw about the initiative taken in this match actually, for me, started with the 2 guys playing up top. I actually thought Richarlison and Colomwani looked really good playing as a dual striker pair. And when I say really good, I know the bar is pretty low, but they at least had something going forward. And they scored 3 goals between them. Colomwani had the assist. We can talk about the individual goals if you want, but I thought that there was at least something different there tactically, which I appreciated to some extent. And I obviously you have to talk about the goals Vitinha scored were obviously great goals, but there's also a real lack of stepping to the ball there at certain points and defensive solidarity.
I'd agree
and
with
then
that.
when you talk about the 4th goal with Romero just giving the ball away, and then of course he gets the penalty for the handball later on with, I don't know why your hand is up here. I get natural position and everything. Just the defensive mistakes are what really led to Spurs not getting anything out of this match, because I thought they were at least trying to score goals, which we haven't seen a lot of in recent games.
You're not gonna get me to bite on Cole Muani and Richarlison being effective up front. You're not gonna get me to do it. I don't want to hear, if you look at the back line of PSG, Nuno Mendes was so bad in this game that he got hooked at halftime. You got a fucking William Pacho, the Colombian international, right, playing next to a 75-year-old Marquinhos, and Zaire Emery is 19 on right back. You're not going to get me juiced up about Richarlison and Cole Muani being able to manage some hold-up play against those guys. What makes me say that is neither of those guys did shit at the weekend, but we'll come on to that. And it's just we did not field a squad that was going to be able to do any more than exactly what they did. And that should be more concerning than anything else. Because we did the best we could. And it was not remotely close to good enough, Scotty.
No, sorry to cut you off, but I agree with what you're saying, and Andrew and I come out and I say tactically things could be done a little bit different, but I also I'm like on the fence because I also agree with you wholeheartedly that like maybe it is too difficult to defend well and create a plethora of scoring opportunities with the squad that we have. And Andrew and I, before we hopped on, we're talking a lot about squad building, and I've been talking about squad building for the last week. I feel like in all my various group chats that it's we I think as a club we identified that we were spending money poorly, and I'm looking all the way back to like Tanguy and Ndombele and Gio Lo Celso and whatever happened with those failed transfers, and how for a while I think that made Levy hesitant to splash the cash, and then we started really spending, and we really couldn't make up our mind there for a while between whether or not we wanted to bring in guys like Bentakers and Kulusevski's, right, who maybe didn't quite make it at a bigger club, but we thought could maybe push us on right now, right, and that bleeds into Mourinho, Conte, all of that, right, and then that didn't work well, and we flip-flopped to spending on youth and investing in the future, right? But that's really all we did there for a while too, until maybe with an asterisk next to Solanke. And I think the indecisiveness around the squad building, and you couple that with the constant changing of managers, has left us, and not only constant changing of managers with very different philosophical approaches to football, right, has left us in a precarious position where we spend a lot of money on guys like Archie Gray and Brennan Johnson, who are good players. Archie Gray will be a great player in my opinion, but the value we're expecting, I don't think is realistic right now based on the money that we spend. Has put us in this position where you're talking about we did the best we could, and I have to agree with you.
I think that's a perfect place to segue into saying that Archie Gray was kind of a bright spot for me. At least going forward. I mean, the thing is that he's young, and when you're defending against the champions of Europe, despite being one yourself, it's difficult as shit, and he got exposed a couple of times. But going forward, I thought he was very much a bright spot. He started the Richarlison goal, I want to say.
Yes. He and Berg on the left side. Yep.
Yeah, and I thought obviously you say what you want to say. Scotty's point is so valid because they're great prospects, but they're playing like prospects, as you do when you're a fucking prospect. And what I think the biggest deficiency that we have in our squad right now is that the Premier League proven producers, as I've talked about on our last podcast, Andrew, that you brought into the club are James Maddison, fucking Dominic Solanke, and Kudus. And you've only got one of the three of those. And you're playing like it. And when you don't have the ability to turn and go, shit, we don't even have, as I mentioned, I can't believe 2 pods in a row I'm going to invoke this name. We don't even have Yves Bissouma and his Premier League pedigree to fall back on in these moments. Like, there is such a stark contrast between a squad that has the ability to go from Richarlison to a Solanke or a Solanke to a Richarlison, and then there is to be in a situation where the guys that are coming on have under 100 Premier League minutes. Like, that's a challenge for any squad, and I think that it's naive of us to think that we're in a position to change this anytime soon.
Yeah, right. I think you're spot on, and I think this kind of goes back to what Ange Postecoglou was talking about last season with, like, this is the start of something. He saw all these prospects around, and he's like, I really want to be able to coach these guys for the next handful of seasons. And then obviously everything that went down, and he's out, and you bring someone else in who is here to change everything about what they've just been learning, these young prospects. So it's going to take time. And look, I'm fully willing to give it, whatever the royal it is, I'm willing to give it time, because I kind of didn't expect Spurs to be hanging around the top 4 this season. I think all of us kind of had very reasonable mid-table level expectations.
I did not.
As a floor.
I was unreasonable, and I'll admit that.
Well, and that's fine. Like, I think the highest reaches we were really thinking was in the 5, 6, 7 range, right? And now,
yeah, I mean, like 5 was kind of like that's kind of what I was looking at was 5. Right. But when we had those conversations, to be fair, we had James Madison was still coming back and going to be a factor. Solanke was still leading the line. We were coming off of the high of winning a European trophy. Kulusevski was supposed to be back by mid-year, and we had more depth in defense and extra prospects. And we just spent a bunch of money on Matthias Tell, and like we felt like we had the makings of a team with depth. We lauded the depth on this team, Andrew, and it's so funny. I guess maybe you just don't think about exactly how much of a difference there is between somebody who is a proven Premier League guy and somebody who will be one day, like Archie Gray.
Yeah, well, and I think the thing that I at least appreciated from the PSG match, and I do want to shift us to Fulham because I think there's a lot more like meat on that bone for right now, but the thing I appreciated was the changes in midfield. You invoked Yves Bissouma's name a few minutes ago, and it's funny because I was thinking about a similar midfield name with Premier League experience who's no longer with us, and that's Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. Like someone like that to just change it up in the midfield, but he at least did change the midfield around, and I thought, as you said, going forward against PSG, those 4 midfielders, Bergvall, Gray, Sarr, and Bentancur in that match actually looked like they had some initiative to go forward and feed those 2 strikers, as opposed to just even Bentancur was moving the ball forward and recycling the ball well in that match, and not just getting the ball and passing it back to a center back like he always does. So I was at least just pleased to see something different, because the Bentancur Paulinho thing has just not been jiving at all.
It's not good, bro.
Never again.
So I don't know, Scotty. What do you think? You're kind of my de facto midfield guy. Like, what do you think about like what you saw versus what we've been working with in the Premier League? Where's the happy medium?
Just thinking about that, actually, I think that nothing's going to get better until you have Kulusevski back in the midfield, unfortunately. And I do think that I know there's a lot of talk about him playing on the right wing. I think it's rubbish. I think he's bang on 8 under Frank. I think hypothetically, let's say Madison and Kulusevski are both back. I think a Paulinho, Kulusevski, Madison midfield is one of the better midfields in the Premier League, to be completely honest. And I see how that could be somewhat taken as maybe an aggressive or over enthusiastic view, right? But I think you bring in a Paulinho to allow 2 guys like Kulusevski and Madison to operate with a little bit less of a defensive responsibility. I think you need the work rate from your 8, but Paulinho does do a really good job as a stopper. I also think that you do have a Xavi Simons who will continue to acclimate himself to the game, right? So there's ways that this can look good, but none of it matters until Kulusevski's back, because right now we don't have anyone who's willing, or I shouldn't say willing, who's able to receive the ball in really tight spaces and keep that football in the midfield right now, and that makes it really hard to progress the football, and I think that's a huge part of what we've been struggling with, not only this year but last year as well. We progress the ball only from fullback to wing for the most part, right? We have a really hard time going through the midfield, and that's causing us a lot of problems. So anyways, a bit of a rant, Todd, but I think it's a fair question.
And I want to put a pin in the fullback to wing comment you just made there for the Fulham match, because that is basically all we saw was Porro and Kudus playing together and no one else. But before we do that, I will just mention 5 of the 8 matches so far played in the Champions League group stage. Spurs sit 16th on 8 points through their 5 matches. They have still 2 home games remaining. Slavia Prague coming up in a little over a week from now. And then it is Borussia Dortmund and Frankfurt, I want to say. I believe I have that right, to close it out. And those will not come until calendar year 2026. So Spurs are going to get through to the playoff stage at least here, and they're going to have the extra matches there to deal with. The Champions League is not good enough these days for a team like Spurs to not get a couple draws here and there and still make their way through the playoff round. That's just kind of what we're looking at, which is fine. And you know what? If they get a favorable draw in the playoff round, I think I saw as of now they would be actually. I think they would have a chance to be playing Barcelona in that playoff round based on where the standings are right now.
That's
but
good.
That'll all shake out obviously over the next 3 matches. There's still plenty of time to discuss that. Again, not a game Spurs expected to be winning against PSG, and sure as hell they did not, even though they played around and scored some goals. When it came to Fulham, though, a little bit of a different story. I'll be completely honest with you guys. I did not watch the Fulham game live. I was on the golf course, and I was telling Scott before we started recording, I came home, and I decided to get a little bite to eat, grab a shower. I put off watching the game for so long after I got home from playing golf yesterday. And 6 minutes in, I wish I had put it off a little bit longer because I was just baffled at what I had seen. Spurs go down 2 goals in the fastest amount of time in their Premier League era. I was just like, what is happening? I literally was so fed up 6.5 minutes into this match, and kind of just sat there a little bit bewildered and a little bit. It almost felt like I was watching a Greek tragedy or something just unfold before my eyes. And
if only it was that poetic.
Right, exactly. And I kind of just hate watched the next 82 minutes of that match, and it didn't make me feel any better, but that's what I did. So TC. I mean, we can get into the goals. The first goal, deflection. It still is over aggressiveness in my eyes from Bergvall in that spot to allow the free runner on the right side. But then we can talk about the second goal. But what was your overall take? Because this team can't win at home, and I don't think I expected to win it, but they sure as hell didn't win this one either.
I expected to win, and I think the reason why is because the 2 poor performances that we saw in the previous week, and the fact that, to be fair, I thought that Spurs made a good showing of themselves in Paris, despite the fact that the scoreline doesn't flatter them because Vitinha was on a different planet that day. Brother, the Fulham one was like, it felt like the Greek tragedy is a good description. I was thinking more on like a situation where you see a guy like walk outside and he like tries to open his umbrella, it's raining and he can't get it open, and like he finally gets it open but he's already soaking wet, and he starts walking, and then he's waiting for a car to pass, and then it splashes him and water comes up and gets all over him anyway, and it's like, and then he figures himself out, he tries to cross the street and he steps in a big puddle. Like, that's what it feels like to watch Spurs play football right now, because the only thing missing from what I saw in the first 6 minutes of that Spurs match was the fucking Benny Hill theme song. Dude, it was calamitous, Andrew. And for me, Saturday was especially rough because I'm a University of Michigan fan and have been since I was 6 years old. And we got our absolute doors blown off by Ohio State, which is fine. They're the best team in the country and will likely win the national championship. What's not fine is that the Spurs bar for the San Diego Spurs meet at Fair Play in North Park, shout out, no free ads, was packed for the Michigan-Ohio State game. And so the Ohio State fans, obviously holding over from their victory, got to sit there and just malign Spurs fans for being Spurs fans of a team that gets shipped 2 goals like that in 6 minutes. It was just insult to injury is the only way that I can aptly describe what it felt like to be there. It rough stuff, buddy. And I guess that led to the conversations of the Spurs faithful at Fair Play being, about what color rope they want to hang Thomas Frank with. Obviously, obviously we're clearly joking here, but it was how quickly they want him fired. Dude, I heard everything from promote Matt Wells, give him a shot as caretaker manager, see how he can do, to bring back Ange because I bet you we could get him for super cheap because we could, and both of those things would be accurate. So I don't know, man. I feel that this squad is so very wayward right now, and I don't see land in sight.
Dude,
Scotty, Thomas Frank came into this one with like almost a similar formation, but some different players. He brings Palhinha in for Bentancur. He brings Kudus in for Sarr. I know you've been Top Sarr's #1 fan all season and wondering why he's not getting minutes, but what did you make of this formation still being utilized with Richarlison and Kolo Muani still playing, and after they fall down 2-0, you're just like waiting for them to punch back, and they kind of didn't until, late on?
Yeah, I think it was more designed to be a 3 up front with what Kolo Muani off on the left. I think there's obviously Kudus was on the right. I did, like you said, my first question is always why is there no Pop Sarr? And why I say that is we can't progress the football. We can't create opportunities. The first 5 games or so, we were creating all of our opportunities through the high press, and Pop Sarr was just absolutely spearheading that entire effort from a high press perspective, right? We stopped playing him. We stopped utilizing him in that super high press. We all thought there was probably an injury. We talked about it on the show. Frank comes out and says, nope, he's just not playing right now. He's perfectly healthy. So the only thing we had going for us tactically, from an attacking perspective, he stops utilizing. We can't create opportunities to save our lives. We're still not seeing Pop Sarr. Don't understand it. But I was happy to see Archie Gray start. I was happy to see Palhinha continue to bed into that role that we're going to need him in when everybody's healthy, I think. But when you couple Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, you end up conceding goals in the first 3 minutes of matches because, as Todd said so well earlier, there are children who don't play, who have not played Premier League, for more than a season and a half. And the only reason you're conceding goals that early in a match is because you're not dialed in, or you're not mature enough to handle the first 5 minutes of a game, or a combination of the two, which is probably what's happening at Spurs right now. But anyone who has established consistent experience at this level understands you just ease your way into a football match. Don't concede in the first 5 minutes, right? Get comfortable, feel the game around you. And guys like Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall are clearly just not ready to do that consistently yet. And here we are. So the entire conversation we've had leads into Fulham.
So I got to ask, Andrew, I think now is a sufficient time. Vicario, what the fuck?
I don't know what you want me to say, man. I mean, it was... You mentioned the Benny Hill theme song earlier. That's exactly what needed to be happening during that moment. It was preposterous that he didn't just boot the ball into the stands. And for him to play that ball up the line, which was... I saw some people saying, well, at least he cleared the ball. The fuck he did.
No.
And then the real kicker of it for me, and I'm going to be really careful here with my words, but he clears the ball up the line, or attempts to, and there is no sight of him heading back to his goal. He's just jogging back to his goal. And then the ball is sailing over everyone's head and into his own net, his own empty net, which he's abandoned, and he's yelling at his teammates and pointing. And I'm going, my guy, you're the one that ventured 30 yards away from your net. To do what exactly? I'm not sure.
He didn't even need to go out there. There was no reason.
It's the type of calamity that you see from someone who has never played the game before. And I don't understand how he thought how he was in his right mind thinking he could get away with something like that. It was absolutely bonkers. And for me, that was I'll be honest. Going back to the PSG game for a moment, when Vitinha scored the second equalizer, I thought, okay, well, this is done and dusted. And to be fair, it was. When that goal went in, I thought there's no chance in hell we're getting 2 back in this game. And sure enough, they didn't. And you could tell in that moment, 6 minutes into a match, just how fucked they all looked. They looked at each other and thought, we are done for. Shoulders dropped, heads dropped, and no one really knew what the fuck they were doing. And I brought it up earlier, Scott. You mentioned all we're able to do right now is play out on the wing. That entire match was played between Porro and Kudus, just trying to bang crosses from the right end.
Yeah.
Those two were just overlapping the entire time. Every once in a while you would see Bergvall come over or Archie Gray would come over and try to do a little something with them. But for the most part, this entire match was Porro and eventually, look, it worked to a goal. Kudus got free, banged a beautiful goal into the top corner. But guess what?
It did not work.
No.
It did not work. That was a broken play. Correct. What I'm saying is that didn't even come from the offensive set. That didn't come from anything. It was a broken play. Kudus picked it up, and in a moment of individual brilliance that you would expect from a Premier League guy, he did what Kudus does, and that was great. But the entire offense was predicated on a play that actually transpired a little earlier than the Kudus goal, and it was a Kolomwani missed chance to the near post. It was a header. And he had the opportunity to put it on net and flashed it wide. And I looked at the people that I was standing there after I had maligned Thomas Frank's offense for the majority of the match, going, this is like Mourinho without Sonny and Kane. Like, this is, as we talked about, like, this is just soul-sucking football. That chance goes off. I turn and I look at him. I'm like, that's the best that we could possibly ask for out of what our offensive philosophy.
Yeah.
And it's really, really disappointing.
Dude, look, I'm not going to advocate for the sacking of Thomas Frank. That's not the point of what I'm going to say here, but I don't think there's anything egregious about people at Fair Play asking the question, like, could things be better with someone else in charge? And I'm not, again, don't think we should sack Thomas Frank, but if we've all seen the stats, the 5 lowest XGs in the Premier League this year, 3 of them are Tottenham. We can't create chances. Todd talks about the shoulders dropping and players looking at one another and saying, we're absolutely fucked. There's no way we're coming back from this. They don't believe that they're able to. And that's tactical. That's also confidence related. I can't think of a better way to say that, right? But the two go hand in hand, and it's very evident that whatever combination, whatever formation, he's kind of scrambling to figure out a way for us to just, that's a simplistic thing to say, create chances. Because the one chance we create, Todd's talking about Kolomwani flashing it, if you get 5 of those, you're going to put one of them away, right? But we're getting one of them. And I can't expect the one chance we create to be taken and then win a football game 1-0, right? So we're in a really tough position, and until Thomas Frank figures out how to tactically approach a game from an attacking perspective without shipping 5 goals like we did against PSG, because I think he kind of had something maybe somewhat figured out in that match, right? But until that happens, we're going to be in a tough spot. Sorry, Todd, go ahead.
That PSG. No, I was just going to say that. I refuse to give him plaudits for that, because that PSG defense was a mess. It was just,
I think it's fair.
Nonsense.
Yeah.
Well, and a big part of that being a mess on the PSG match was, honestly, for me it was Christian Romero, and he obviously was missing from the Fulham match because of the red card he picked up. And that's not to say anything negative of Kevin Danso stepping in his place. I think we all respect Kevin Danso as a third center back on this club, but Romero was, for me, part of the reason they were so bad against PSG. His direct involvement in giving away goals, quite frankly, with the penalty and the hospital pass to Sarr that turned into a goal as well. So, the fact that he's missing from your defense as well against Fulham, and you give up just two of the more ridiculous goals, and then to the point about producing. This is per Opta. Spurs are averaging 9.5 shots and 3.2 shots on target this season, which would both be the lowest averages in a season since the 2003-2004 campaign.
Unacceptable, brother.
Talking more than 20 years ago.
And that's just, for me, Andrew...
The chances, like you said, Scott, if you produce more of those chances,
right,
you're bound to get a few goals out of them, but they're not producing enough.
We don't have any teeth, boys. We don't. Our offense does not scare anybody. It is milquetoast. We don't... This is... Andrew and I were talking about this on the last pod, Scotty. This is the first time in a decade that we haven't had Son or Kane. And we're a team in Tottenham Hotspur that throughout our history has had a talisman player. And we have none.
Yeah.
And we look it.
Yeah, I mean,
100%.
you go back even further than Son and Kane. You're talking Bale, and Modric, and Defoe, and like
even further than that. You're talking about Klinsmann and Ginola, and like Tottenham have always Glenn Hoddle, like Tottenham have the Gascoignes, like Tottenham have always had the player that they can hang a hat on. And right now there is no one in this squad. And the thing that I struggle with is that it should be James Maddison, or it should be Kulusevski. Or shit, even if you have a Dom Solanke, like I don't need you to be the greatest striker in Premier League history. I just need you to be dominant Solanke and bang in the chances from inside the 6-yard box. Those are serviceable ways to win with a team format without a talisman. But goodness me, without them, where the fuck are the goals supposed to come from?
Yeah.
We don't have them.
100%. And we talk about talisman, but I think when I look at Spurs, I think Klinsmann is the last like real talisman that we signed, and people were like, "Oh shit, Spurs have signed Klinsmann," right? Everyone else was either like Defoe, maybe, right? But these were all players who Spurs maybe took a chance on, and they became super talented, like the Modric's, like the Bales, right?
The Van de Vaarts.
That was maybe a pretty star-studded signing on deadline day, right? So there's maybe an example of what I'm talking about. But beyond that, we developed Kane. Everyone thought Son was shit. Like we've never since Klinsmann been a team that's going to be able to attract that talisman, right? We have to find them and develop them. Nothing's changed. In fact, Spurs are an absolute banter club. We all know that, right? It's not controversial to say such a thing. And there's probably a lot of players who are on that level who aren't going to come to Tottenham, right? They've seen what happens to a guy like Tanguy Ndombele's career, which is his own fault, but there's lots of examples of...
Well, that guy left us and won a Scudetto. Yeah. I don't feel bad for him at all. Fuck off.
Fair, right? But just my point is Spurs are also not only kind of a banter club, but a club that players probably look at and say that might not be the best move to make on an upwards trajectory.
I think honestly, I don't think it has anything. It may, but I think ultimately Tottenham doesn't pay the wages, Scotty, and that's why people.
It's 100%. Well said, Todd, and we've talked about that a lot, right? But my point to this rant is all that the only thing that's ever happened outside of winning the Europa League since I've been a Spurs fan were the Pochettino years, and that was an example of a manager just getting more out of the squad. And so my point is, the manager at Spurs is going to have to get more out of the squad to compete for the things that we want to compete for, right? Until we actually start to pile up some trophies at that level, you're going to have to perform above your expectations, right? And get more juice out of the squeeze. And my finally getting to the point, I'm just wondering if Thomas Frank Knight might not be exactly that person. I don't know yet. I think we're going to figure that out by the end of the season, right? But
all right.
Again, I'm just having the conversation here. I'm not advocating for the sacking of Thomas Frank, but
I think we need to talk about it.
I think Todd wants to have the conversation,
and we can.
I think
right?
I'm just saying. I think it's about that time, buddy.
So
and let's do it.
I just want to finish your point, Scott. Sorry.
No, no. You're good. I'm pretty much done. But I look at Brentford and I look at playing for the last 7 years in a way that is don't lose, win if you can. Don't lose, win if you're able to, right? Don't lose. That it is a very different expectation now, and 7 years of that to now, that doesn't happen overnight, right? That is a massive shift for a guy like Thomas Frank. And right now we are very much playing like a team who's trying not to lose and will take a win if somehow they can come across that win, right? And that is not going to last very long at Tottenham Hotspur, and that's because of the fans.
I'll correct the record real quickly because I made a mistake earlier by saying Romero missed the game due to a red card he picked up. Of course, it was yellow card accumulation that he was suspended for, not a red card. But a few other shots I wanted to get off here about this game, and then we'll talk about what happened after the game because I think that's what everyone's kind of waiting for here. 5 points from 7 home games this season for Spurs, which is just inexplicable. I mentioned earlier the earliest Spurs have ever gone down 2-0 in a match in the Premier League era. It was Fulham's first win at Tottenham in almost 13 years, which was also another stat that I found that is just mind-boggling. And I think the one that most people have seen already, and that there are still 2 chances to break this record, but this is the 10th home loss this calendar year, which is the most since 2003. That year comes up once again. If they lose an 11th, I do believe that is the most in the Premier League era. And there are, like I said, 2 more home matches this calendar year in the Premier League, and a chance to, unfortunately, break that record. I believe the matches are the Brentford match next week and then Liverpool. So,
sweet, good times.
Good.
We heard the booing of Vicario. We heard the Bronx cheer for Vicario when he did clear the ball later after the blunder. That obviously stirred up some emotions. There was booing at halftime. There was booing at full time. There was a reaction on the pitch from Pedro Porro yelling at, it looked like Lucas Bergvall, for applauding the fans. There's reports today, Sunday, as we record this, from numerous outlets that Spurs held a players-only meeting to discuss their relationship with the fans and I guess exactly what the hell is going on, because it seems like this has all gotten to a place of toxicity at this point. And I think that's the part that is the most disheartening to me, is that this all just seems super, super toxic. And there doesn't seem to be a cohesiveness in this club for a direction or what's good, what is right, who has the right to do what. There's a lot of these conversations being had, so I'll turn it over to you boys because I don't really know how to tackle or wrap my arms around any of this conversation. It's a much loftier conversation to me. I'm not sure. Scott, what do you think?
You're going to have to ask me that question again. I'm sorry, I got distracted. I thought you were talking to Todd.
Well, no, it's all good, dude. I'll jump in here. Like, Andrew, Scotty made the point, like, maybe this Thomas Frank isn't the right person for this gig. And I don't know, man. I think that the more and more you look at what success looks like in this league, you're going to have to pick a strategy and you're going to have to go with it. What's really hard for me is that we were excited when Thomas Frank came in because of his ability to shape the identity of the club around the pieces that he had, his tactical versatility, his ability to see what he's got and figure out the best way to use it. That's what we were really excited for, as opposed to the previous manager who got the ethos of the club. I don't think anyone can deny that, and oozed what it meant to be Spurs, but also like tactically struggled. That was not his area of expertise. There has to be a happy medium, obviously. There has to be some way that you find someone who gets the ethos of the club but also has the tactical fortitude to be successful in all 4 competitions. I think that has to exist. It exists for some other clubs, but I think without the ethos I think they're going to fail. And Thomas Frank doesn't seem to get what it means to be Spurs. And I think that's going to be his undoing, Andrew.
But what exactly does that? I mean,
To dare is to do, brother. To dare is to do, right? And like, say what you want to say about Ange.
I don't know what the manager has to do with the relationship between the fans and the players. Like,
For me, I think that the fans are not upset at the individual players for their play. They're upset for the results on the pitch, which is completely fair. And you look at Vicario and he's made mistakes, and when you make mistakes like that, you're going to get a ribbing. But like, the fans are upset because we've lost fucking 10 home games in a calendar year. The fans are upset because we've got 5 points from 7 home matches in this Premier League season. Like, this is 100%. You could set this on the fealty of a Thomas Frank team to effectively compete in the Premier League. And let me ask a question. Isn't that exactly what got Ange sacked in the first place? So now what we're seeing is a manager who doesn't understand the ethos of this club as well as the last manager, who is barely treading water 16th in the European competition that we're in, and is clearly out of his depth in the league competition. What the fuck are we doing? And I think that when you have that as a circulating current in the fan base, they're going to lash out at the players when the players fail to deliver. And I think that starts with the leadership. And without that leadership, without that focal point, ultimately you're going to see the demise of player-fan relationship, because football is a type of sport where you're intimate enough that the players can hear you when you tell them their shit.
Todd, you're spot on, man. I last year we talked a lot about, I want to say this exact thing, right? But we had similar conversations, and last year I said a couple times on podcast, I'm confident in us beating, and this was last year, right? Man United, Southampton, and that's probably it, right? And I wasn't joking when I said that. Man United, I'm not confident in beating anymore, especially they're trending in the right direction, and we're not, right? Southampton's now in the championship. Wolves is kind of the new Southampton, and if I'm not mistaken, we already did not beat Wolves once this year.
That would be good.
And so my point is, I don't know if I looked through the Premier League table, I can't name you one team that I would put a rubber stamp on us winning that game, and that's a little bit concerning. I get what you guys are both saying. Here's my problem. We just got done 20 minutes ago saying how poorly this squad has been constructed, how it's very young and there's not a lot of Premier League experience in it, and there's a lot of players that are not the right fit for what we're trying to do, which I get. There's been a lot of years of poor squad building, and last year they infused a lot of youth into it, thinking, all right, let's get a little bit younger. We might be a little bit inexperienced, but let's try to get younger and build through this downtime. Then they fire the manager and bring in a new manager. And TC, you're right. To some extent, there was a little bit of excitement because of maybe trying to strike a balance between what Ange was doing and what we thought could be a newfound pragmatism within Thomas Frank's system. I'll be honest, Thomas Frank didn't really do a whole lot to get me super excited, but I was at least ready for a more pragmatic approach. But now we're saying we're not sure if he's the right man because he doesn't have the leadership qualities. So I'm trying to find this balance between a poorly built squad, a manager without the correct qualities, and by the way, there was apparently a 10-point checklist that Vinay Venkatesham went through, and he met every one of them. So I'd love to know what those 10 points are. But I don't know exactly where the balance is between how much of it is this one thing. Because anyone that says you should fire the manager, the pushback on that is going to be, he hasn't had the time. He hasn't had the healthy players. He hasn't had X, Y, Z. But then,
you can also say, but also this squad just sucks. They've done a terrible, but like there are two sides to this coin. There's maybe three sides to this coin, and I don't really know how you improve all of them at the same time. Can you only give attention to one or the other? I'm not really sure where you go from here.
But we just had this exact same conversation 6 months ago when we were talking about Ange and the fact that he didn't have all the healthy players. And last year, the first year of Ange, we ended up fifth. And like, how could you say that, this is a fair representation of what he brings to the table? And we scrapped that because we needed to go with somebody that can develop this young squad that we were bringing in. And we haven't seen shit in terms of development. But granted, we're, a quarter of the way, a third of the way into the season. But like, I'm not excited about how Matthias Tell is doing. I'm not excited about, what a lot of our prospects are doing because I feel like they're still years away from being the players that we need them to be week in and week out in the Premier League. And it's like, my biggest thing, Andrew, bottom line is I don't see where the goals are going to come from. And if you don't see where the goals are going to come from, how can you be excited about what this philosophy is doing for your football team? Like what in the club? And I just can't get past that.
On that note, we say now we think we need a manager who brings leadership. Like, I just want to create like 7 shots on target. Whoever can do that at this point. And I'm like, honestly, whatever's going on, it's very much at the feet of the top of the organization, and obviously leadership's changed, and that is a diluted thing to say because of the leadership change, right? But there is crossover. It falls at the feet of the player development group, it falls at the feet of the medical staff, and it falls at the feet of the players. So this is a 4+ headed monster that we're dealing with the Spurs right now. Sacking Thomas Frank isn't going to change much, right? If that's the revolving center of this conversation, right? It's a much deeper problem, and I think if you look at everything that's happened over the past 30 months probably, it's clear that it's not going to heal itself with quick fire changes. It's going to have to be something much more drastic, and maybe that was Levy and Vinay Venkatesham and bringing back Paratici and whatever. There's a lot of things that are happening, but fans are impatient, like we've already said on this show, and I don't think there's many Spurs fans who are willing to give this another 2 to 3 years for things to get figured out. And maybe that's a modern football problem, but I think
that's exactly the problem.
Yeah. This is
like,
just very...
Well, like TC, you were just saying just a moment ago, you don't think that these prospects that we have right now, you think they're a couple of years away from being the players that they will be. Well, those couple of years those are the down times, those are the development times, those are the times where, and if they're not playing, they're not developing.
Okay, but yes and no. There's 4 fucking competitions. The problem is that we're asking them to do way too much, way too soon. And that's what I'm talking about. That's not proper development. That's burning out fresh legs, dude. Like, that's not what we're looking for, in my opinion. And that's why having Premier League players, proven guys that you can rely on to make it through a season, while your prospects are betting into the team in cup runs and in Champions League, I guess it's not group stage anymore, but whatever we're calling this, those types of games with versus Slavia Prague, right? Like, these are the types of places where you're excited to embed some of your prospects, right? But when you're starting children last year for Ange, children for the majority of the second half of the season. Like, and then you're coming over here and you're looking at Thomas Frank and you're like, listen, I need you to take this shit and turn it into Shinola immediately, because that's what you do. You develop prospects. So I got a lot of those. Now do your thing. Unfortunately, and I made this analogy last week, and I don't want to beat a dead horse about it, but some guys are just better as X's and O's guys, right? The coordinator guys. What you need, and this is just the way that I put it. I was talking to Ben from San Diego Spurs and outside after the match, and I just looked at him and I said, Ben is an armed services gentleman, and we appreciate his service. Um, and I just looked at him and I said, Ange, you say what you want to say about, the record and about, tactically who he was and who he wasn't. But Ange is a leader of men.
Right.
And he figures out a way, one of his primary skill sets is figuring out a way to help his group of men bond together for a common goal. And Thomas Frank is an AP history teacher. And I understand you're trying to make this subject fun because it's your job and you teach it every year. But realistically, it's fucking boring for everybody unless we figure out, how we can talk about a topic that we actually care about. And right now, what we're talking about is boring as shit when we're talking about Spurs. Our offense sucks, our defense sucks, our transition game sucks, and our goalkeeper sucks. This is not fun.
It very much is not, and it won't get any more fun this week because they have to travel back to St. James Park, a place where they just lost in the League Cup a few weeks ago. This week for a Premier League match against, again, on Tuesday, and then return home to face Thomas Frank's former club, Brentford, on Saturday. And it's weird, you say AP history teacher, like, history does repeat itself from time to time, and I'm afraid that, like,
especially at Spurs. God dang.
It is a very tough look. I don't know where it goes from here, man. I'm not pressing panic buttons, but I guess the place I want to leave this, Frank kind of dug out the fans that were booing a little bit. Where do you stand on that? Because I'm fine with booing. Like, I'm not.
Me too.
I'm not one to do it myself, but like, if you want to, go for it. It doesn't bother me. I do think that there's a little bit of a sensitivity thing going on here, and I do think that within a football stadium, you do need a good atmosphere. It does. You do see it translate to the pitch sometimes, where the place gets rocking, people get singing, like things start happening positively on the pitch for your team. Obviously, Spurs have not seen this because their home form has just been dreck of late. But
in the league specifically, you got to think
it has. But you're
like,
playing,
if you look in Europe, there's been some great European nights. It doesn't matter who they've beaten. Like, there's been some great European nights along the way. The home form over the last calendar year in the league has been atrocious, and there's no way around that, Andrew. And I'm certainly not making excuses for anything that happened. I go back. I don't think that you can stress enough three things, and I'll leave it here. Tottenham Hotspur are something like the 8th or 9th most profitable footballing organization in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We're a massive entity. Thomas Frank is not interacting with the players or with the media or with the fans like you need he's essentially the CEO of Tottenham's, on pitch performance, right? So like, you need your CEO to act like a CEO. He needs to say CEO things, and he needs to produce CEO results. And when things go sideways, he needs to take CEO accountability. And I saw a lot of excuses and a lot of deflections and a lot of passing the buck from Thomas Frank. I saw him mock a potential signing over the summer and watch the guy hand him a hat trick on the weekend. I can't tell you how the body language of the players tells me everything I need to know about what they think of Thomas Frank as a football coach and as a leader. And I think when you look at him in contrast to Ange, it's like replacing John Wayne with Rick Moranis, brother. Like, you can't, like, you're gonna have a hole that needs to be filled. And I don't think that Thomas Frank could carry Ange's teacup when it comes to the charisma department. I just studied leadership a lot in my life, Andrew, and I understand that to a man, body language when you hear from your leader, when you're approaching your leader, tells you everything that you need to know about what that person thinks of the leader. And there's been a couple of games this season where Thomas Frank has like tried to go out and greet some of the players and like prominent players like Mickey and such, and they just kind of look at him and walk on by. And it's like that they do not respect that guy the way that they respected Ange. And that you say what you want to say about the football. You say what you want to say about it. Mm-hmm. But I am very much come back on, come back with your shield or on it, basically. You know what I mean? Like I'm a swashbuckling football kind of guy. And I don't know if Thomas Frank could swash his way out of a buckle if you gave it to him. I'm just saying, man, it's not, I've not seen anything encouraging from Spurs in the tough times that we knew they were going to have along the way from Thomas Frank.
It is a little astonishing that a third of the way through the season, Spurs sit 12th on 18 points, which is a lower standing and lower point total than they had to this point last season under Ange Postecoglou. It's jarring when you think about it that way. And
it's only jarring for people that wanted to see Ange go, I think. I think for people that understood what Ange could be in season 3 with healthy players, I think that changes things. Now, rewind. Let's say that the same situation befell Ange that has befallen Thomas Frank from an injury standpoint. Madison goes down and Solanke goes missing and Kolomowani breaks his jaw and Matthias Tell flops. And do I think Ange is more adept than Thomas Frank to pull out a staying up season? No. Thomas Frank, as Scotty so eloquently pointed out, does a great job of not losing and winning if he can. Mm-hmm. And Ange does a great job of winning because he beat you into submission, or losing because you were able to play over the top or break him down or get one-on-ones against our substandard goalkeeper.
Well, and Thomas Frank has pretty much admitted as much. They want to be more solid defensively before even thinking about attacking. And guess what? It's shown. Although the last few weeks, the defensive part has really faltered, and that's where you get to a losing streak.
Let's just call it what it is. Okay? Nobody wants to talk about it, so I want to say it. Since Romero's abductor injury, he's not the same player. And when Romero is not 100%, our defense does not have the gravitas that it normally does. And we're playing that way. He's played pensively, and we look pensive. And when he second guesses himself, we run into a lot of problems.
It's not good. Hey, a quick few notes on Spurs Women on the international break right now, obviously on the women's side of the game. But there was the League Cup draw last week.
Where Jesus was there.
Spurs were drawn to Manchester United in the quarterfinal of the League Cup, so we'll see how that goes. If they were to advance, they would get to face either Crystal Palace or Arsenal in the semifinal, which, all things considered, that would be nice because Spurs have actually played Arsenal well on the women's side of things in recent days. The draw, as you mentioned, was really something. If you did not catch this story, the draw was a live stream done on TikTok by a social media influencer that goes by the name of GK Berry, along with her partner, Ella Rutherford, who plays for WSL2 side Portsmouth. And look, I'm a millennial, and millennials are often accused of being cringe, but this was about the most cringe thing I've ever witnessed, this whole draw that they did on the old TikTok app. It was full of just weird sexual innuendo and crude jokes, and it was also just a farce of a draw. There was an instance where a ball was placed back in the bag after being taken out of the bag. It just was not a professionally done League Cup draw. It was a farce, if we're being honest. And then there was the moment which forced WSL Football, the organization that runs both the Women's Super League and WSL2, forced them to apologize to one Tottenham Hotspur Football Club because there was a little line dropped during this live stream, what do we think of Tottenham line, which is we all know what that means. We've all heard that one before. So they had to issue an apology to the club, and it's not even so much that part of it. It's not even so much the anti-Tottenhamness of it. It's more just the lack of an actual, like, you want us to care about these things. You want us to think that this is an actual, trophy worth holding, an event worth holding on the women's side of things. Let's treat it with a little bit of professionalism and a little bit of decency is all I ask. And a little bit of, this is actual competition and not this is all being done and catered to a certain generation and a certain social media crowd, because that's not what this is supposed to be about.
Well, okay. First, this is a very American take, from us, because I fully agree with you. I would love to see the decorum and respect that a serious competition draw is due.
I'm not saying you have to have the Queen do it either. Like
certainly not. But also
the Royals.
You get
know
it.
What I'm saying.
You get it. But in America, we give legitimacy to our female sports. And it's something where they're in major cities and there's significant leagues and there's marketing budgets that are put behind it and people care. People show up.
Sports bars across this country devoted to only showing women's sports.
Exactly that. And in the UK, the legitimacy of women playing football is is unfortunately like a bad Tottenham joke more often than not. And it's tough to see the WSL get the respect that it deserves on a regular basis, especially from the British media, if we're being honest about it.
Yeah.
And when you see what this was, to be candid, was they took a marketing swing. They said, hey, we're going to try to get younger kids. We're going to go on this platform, which is where everybody's getting, all the kids are getting, all of our target demo are getting their information and their news. They're going to TikTok. And so we're going to go here and we're going to live stream it with people they know and care about because we're appealing to them. What the problem is when you try to go after a new target demo, the most critical piece of that approach is making sure that you don't alienate your fucking base. And that's exactly what they did with this shenanigan. I think, unfortunately, this kind of set them back in terms of their legitimacy and the way that they will be covered and viewed. I don't know what the long-term ramifications of this will be, but I can tell you in the short term, it was a big L, and I think everybody around it knows that this could not happen again.
The other big L, at least from a we think standpoint, is that Katinka Tamberg picked up an injury on Norway duty this international break. No idea on the severity of it, but it sucks that we can't have nice things, is all I'm saying, because it would be really nice if we could. But, that's just the way it goes. Spurs Women will be back in action next week. WSL play returns. They face Aston Villa on Sunday at home. So we will be sure to talk about that one, as well as on the men's side of things. Again, another trip to Newcastle, just not.
Why the fuck do I have to go see Joe Lynch punch my players for 90 minutes on a Tuesday?
And you think Thomas Frank's going to want to beat Brentford on Saturday at home, or
I don't know that guy gives a fuck. And what I mean by that is, of course, he wants to win, and of course, we are a football. Like, it just, I realize now I didn't understand maybe the importance of a Mourinho or a Pep or a manager whose name has a little something to it in the footballing world. I didn't understand. And I think I do more now than I ever have. Because on paper, Thomas Frank should be a better manager than we had in Ange Postecoglou when it comes to the project that we were building. But I'd take him back in a fucking heartbeat.
I know you would.
So I'll own all that too. Because this sucks. This is not fun.
It's not, but it is fun potting.
Always, sir.
Do it for this edition of the Tottenham Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Tottenham Depot. Leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice to help spread the word about the show. For Scott, he can be followed at ScotchyBird. TC is at TC_Show. You can follow me at Astetka. Most importantly, follow us at Tottenham Depot on all the socials. This has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.